Hey guys, it's Murlocs. So here's the deal. Patch 16.0 hit Hearthstone on Thursday, and since then, the Battlegrounds meta has been a little bit less ideal than I'd like it to be. Pretty much with the patch we saw, it was mostly setting up for the release of the Descent of Dragons expansion, as well as some Winterfell content that's going to be coming into the game. But it was also a big balance patch for Battlegrounds. And with this patch, we saw 3 new heroes. There was Edwin, Van Cleef, Archvillain Rafaam, and Sylvanas, Windrunner. I'd say Edwin is very strong. His hero power is quite cheap, and you're able to buff up your units throughout the game just by buying more stuff, which is something you're always going to be doing. Rafaam is also quite strong. His ability to steal minions from other people can end up giving you quite an advantage if you get the right thing. And in terms of Sylvanas, I would say her hero power is very weak. I'd say that it is not worth using. A lot of people have been saying that if you made the hero power so that if it destroyed the minion instead of removing it, then that would be a lot better because you get the death rattles and such. Might be a little bit too strong that way, but it would be a lot better than what it is now, which is not strong enough at all. We also saw balance changes to a lot of heroes. Lich Baziel got a buff, and there was a nerf to Maleficent, Mana Storm, Patchwork, AFK, Rat King, and Akazamarak. But I'd say more importantly than any of the hero introductions, I'd say that the Lightfang Enforcer nerf, which brought it from giving buffs of +2/+2 to +2/+1, was definitely important, as well as we got 2 new cards, which was Floating Watcher and King Bagurgle. And I'd say that the addition of King Bagurgle has pushed Murlocs over the line. King Bagurgle is a 5-star unit with the battle cry and death rattle of giving all of your Murlocs +2/+2. And from here you can expect that this video will be a bit of a rant where I'm going to give you an analysis of the state of Battlegrounds from my perspective during this current patch. Alright, let's break it down. So we're going to start with an analysis of Murlocs. So here's the deal. You've got a strong early game, a strong mid game, and a strong late game. That's where they are now. You've got War Leader and Seer getting online as fast as Tavern Tier 2, with every Murloc in the game being a viable candidate for the buffs that they can give to the other Murlocs. This is one of the main strengths of Murlocs, is that every Murloc basically is just a Murloc, and Murlocs all benefit the same way from the Murloc tag. Unlike any other tribe in Battlegrounds, you can keep your Murloc from the beginning of the game and take it all the way to the end of the game. Currently in Battlegrounds, there are 3 poisonous options. Only 3. There is Toxfin, there is Megasaur, and there is Myexna. That's it. If you want access to Toxfin or Megasaur, you need to either A, be running Murlocs, or B, have an Amalgam. Obviously, if you've ever played Battlegrounds, you're aware that Amalgam is the best unit in the game because of the fact that it has all the tribes, and possibly most importantly, it has the Murloc tribe. The last option for poison being Myexna, which is definitely not as good of an option for poisonous. You can definitely take it, but there aren't a lot of ways to buff it, and that is the major reason why Toxfin is a much better option. Especially since Toxfin comes down at 4 and Myexna comes down at 6. Another very strong tool that Murlocs have is the Primal Fin Lookout, which is the card that gives you access to discovering other Murlocs. Discover is a very strong mechanic in all of Hearthstone, and specifically in Battlegrounds, I would say it is much stronger even. No other tribe has access to a Discover card. The only way that any other comp can discover anything is either to be Elise and get the Discover hero power, or to get triples. But keep in mind that those Discovers are actually on a wider pool, given that they are at an entire Tavern tier level, and not within the tribe that you are specifically running. So Murlocs have a narrow Discover option. This gives you access to early Begurgles, potentially. It gives you higher chance of triples, as well as finding those key Murlocs, including Begurgle, of course, that you want to be using on your minions with the buffs that they provide. Keeping in mind that Murloc's buffs come through Battlecry, and Battlecry cycling is already a very effective and almost mandatory strategy in the late game that keeps your minions getting larger and larger. Then you have Megasaur coming in as your late game bomb that can give your entire team Poisonous, Divine Shield, Wind Fury, Taunt, anything that you might need. Poisonous is a very important keyword in the late game that is going to make it so that you can kill gigantic minions that would otherwise be next to impossible, if not actually impossible to kill. And Divine Shield as a mechanic is vital to keeping your key minions alive against your opponent's poisonous and just generally very large minions. So with the buff that Murlocs got a few weeks back, where Seer was brought down from Tavern Tier 3 to Tavern Tier 2, as well as the Primal Fin Lookout coming from Tavern Tier 5 down to Tavern Tier 4, the entire curve of Murlocs were significantly improved. And with the addition of King Begurgle, you now have this very good tool for smoothing out the transition for Murlocs from going from early game into the late game. Originally, Murlocs were very strong in the early game, and they struggled a lot in the mid game to get all the way up to the late game where the Megasaur would come in and win the game, basically. The buffs came in and made their early game more consistent, made it easier for them to maybe live a little longer with the ability to find those important Murlocs with the Lookout. But now, when you hit Tavern Tier 4 with Murlocs, you have access to the Lookout, which can get you Begurgles, and gives access to Toxfins, which you either find on their own or through the Lookout as well. So altogether you have the War Leader and the Seer, making the early game very strong. Then you get to Tavern Tier 4, you get the Lookouts, you get the Toxfins, you get the Begurgles, and then your board becomes very stable. And then you come to the point where you get Tavern Tier 5, and you get triples, or you go all the way to Tavern Tier 6, and you get those Megasaurs that will finish out the game. So overall, you have all-purpose Murlocs that can be buffed and made useful all throughout the game, as well as having access to Lookout, which gets you those key Murlocs that can keep you going all the way to the point that you have the biggest bomb of any tribe in Megasaur. And of course, like any other tribe, you would want an amalgam, but this might be the only tribe where you really don't need one. I'm sure you've seen through your experience playing Battlegrounds that amalgams are so core to builds because of the fact that they can have the Taunt, the Divine Shield, and most importantly the Poisonous. And since Murlocs can get access to that without amalgam, or even get an amalgam and then have all that anyways, that really makes them good. Now I want to get into the other tribes so that you can see comparatively how much stronger the Murlocs are. First of all, Beasts, I would say, are the weakest tribe right now. Their main gimmick is Death Rattle. You have some key cards with Hyena basically being a must in any beast build, Rat Pack also being basically a must if you want it to continue, and Pack Leader as well. It has a few issues with board space, given that you're creating so many tokens and you want to maximize the tokens, but you're also only having 7 spaces on the board, and the hyenas and the pack leaders are taking up some of those spaces, so you can't fully maximize all of the token space while also maximizing the effect that those tokens are having on your comp. These board space issues also make tripling vital to your success, so that you don't have a bunch of doubles taking up too much room where you need other things to be. And another major issue that beasts have is that they easily fall apart to a bad attack hitting one of your key cards. If you have your hyena or your pack leader getting sniped off before your tokens have went off, it can be a big problem. Taunts could be an important keyword for protecting your high value cards, but Houndmaster is your only access to that keyword, and there aren't really any good options to get from it. Beasts have a lot of minions in the early game that you don't really want to carry through to the late game, like the Kindly Grandmother, or maybe the Raptor. You don't want to waste your taunt on those kinds of minions, and you also can't taunt up your hyena because it needs to live. You can't taunt up your token generators because you need those tokens to go off later in the battle so that they actually get to take full advantage of the board space that you now have. The beasts can do okay in the early game, and their mid game is good if you got those key cards that you do need to get. But in the late game, you kind of need to rely on Mama Bear, which is normally coming in too late because it won't give you the buffs on the minions unless you put down new minions. Therefore, all of the minions you've already committed aren't getting the Mama Bear buffs. Your Mama Bear can, of course, buff your token still, but that requires that she, again, does not get sniped off like all the other important beast cards that can easily just lose as soon as you are unlucky by some attacks. The amount of death rattles that you have can make up for the fact that you don't have the raw stat power of other tribes, but generally speaking, it isn't really enough. They also suffer from the fact that they have the highest tier buff minion, which is the Vermin Sensei, coming in at tier 4. Other tribes have buff minions coming in as early as tier 2 or tier 3. Beasts are also the only comp that doesn't have access to a full board buff, such as the Seers, the Begurgles, the Metal Tooth Leapers, and the Crystal Weavers. Alright, on to demons. So demons have access to the self-damage gimmick, which lets you take damage so that you make your minions bigger. The problem with the self-damage idea is that if you are already losing, you are putting yourself even lower on health, and it becomes to a point that it is no longer viable for you to be dealing damage to yourself when you can't even win a round at all. It's of course fine if you are winning rounds, but if you are not able to keep up, you can't be dealing damage to yourself for free. It also suffers from the fact that you need some specific cards that work in that comp, and if you hop onto the comp too late in the game, they don't get big enough. They need to be getting online very fast. If you grab a Wrathweaver too late, it's not worth it anymore. This idea that the self-damage comp can fall out of the game entirely is very detrimental to demons, given that their pool of cards is greatly reduced if you are ignoring the self-damage cards entirely. And there are also a lot of other key cards that you really must get. Soul Juggler is a must, Overseer is a must, and Void Lord basically is a must when paired with the Soul Juggler. Really, all that demons do is just have big stats and do some soul juggling to hit some minions. They do benefit from having a lot of tribal taunts that you can use. So they do work well in the early game and the mid game if you are getting those important cards. But once you get to the late game, poison just decimates demons and they can't keep up anymore. They don't have the Divine Shield to protect themselves, and they don't have the poison to hit back either. Alright, and on to mechs. So mechs have a lot working for them. They have Divine Shield, they have Taunt, and they have Death Rattle in spades, all over the tiers. Cobalt Guardian is potentially the second best minion after Amalgam in the entirety of Battlegrounds, I'd say. One Cobalt Guardian can single-handedly carry your entire game if you have enough mech token-based death rattles that you can keep that Divine Shield coming back over and over and over so that you can clear out everything that your opponent has. If you look at their card pool, mechs actually have almost as many buff cards as Murlocs do. And this Divine Shield refresh mechanic that Cobalt has is a way for you to deal with poison in the late game, which other tribes don't have access to. Mechs really benefit from the fact that most mechs are just straight up good minions, and you would feel good putting them in any comp, even if it wasn't a mech comp for the most part. This is why mechs are very good in the early game, and with Cobalt, they are very, very good in the mid game, and if you can scale that up, it can be very good in the late game. Keeping in mind that Cobalt Guardian is basically the core of the entire comp, and you need to find that card. And Replicating Menace is almost as important because of the fact that it triggers those Death Rattle refreshes on the Divine Shield. Security Rover is also a very good card that you can use in the same kind of way, and of course the more mech generation you have, the better. And the last thing we have is the Menagerie comp, which doesn't really come in until you find a Light Fang Enforcer, which is Tavern Tier 5. If you manage to find it earlier somehow, then you can get it going much faster, but generally speaking, it starts coming in the mid to late game. Turning your comp into a Menagerie comp is generally a transition that you have to do from something you were already doing to this Menagerie idea, where you have basically the best minions from all the different types of tribes that you could find, or the best minions that you can get through your rolls at least. The Menagerie comp works very well with the Cleave minions, which are the Foe Reaper and the Cave Hydra, so that you can make their attack very strong and then potentially kill multiple of your opponent's minions in one attack. But with the nerf on Light Fang Enforcer, I'd say that with that extra 1 health being missing from every single proc of the Light Fang, it has become much weaker. That health was very important for your scaling into the late game. You can also use Bran a lot for getting the buffs across multiple minions, but what it really struggles from is the fact that you can't go into the game expecting to be running a Menagerie comp because you can't rely on finding these specific cards. There is also the issue that balancing your tribes correctly on the board can be a little difficult, and finding the cards that you do want to be buffing throughout the rest of the game can also be quite difficult. And despite having access to all the tribes in the game, a Menagerie build still has trouble getting as many keywords as a Murloc comp that's found a Megasaur. So overall, what I've seen since the patches hit is Amalgam is more vital than it's ever been before. Everyone knows how good Murlocs are. They've seen it happening, so they are all going for Murlocs. Because of the fact that everyone is going for Murlocs, the pool of Murlocs is very strained, and it becomes harder to find the Murlocs that you need to find, and the RNG of who gets the Murlocs that they need is way more significant than ever before. Because of the Murlocs' very strong early game, they can bully other players out of the game very quickly if they aren't going Murlocs as well. And even more so than the other comps, the ones who are trying to get Murlocs and aren't being as successful are getting bullied even more by the successful Murloc players. So the resulting meta is you basically have two tribes that are utterly unreasonable to build in Beasts and Demons because they struggle in the early and mid game to keep up, and then in the late game they just can't win. You still have mechs that are very good, but they're heavily dependent on certain finds. Though they are less contested than Murlocs, the Murlocs are definitely more consistent. That being said, they are consistent as a tribe, but consistently high rolling into the Murlocs that you do need can be very difficult when everyone is playing them. In my opinion, playing Battlegrounds right now, it feels like crap. All you get to do is try and build Murlocs better than everyone else. Anything else you try to build, you're going to struggle a lot. I'd say that I don't really have fun playing Battlegrounds at the moment. I don't plan on playing Battlegrounds up until they do another patch. Of course, this patch just came out. I don't expect them to be putting out anything soon, so I'm probably not going to be playing Battlegrounds for a while, is my expectation. Of course, that's not much of a problem, given that Descent of Dragons is about to come out, and I do have every intention of playing the hell out of that expansion and trying out all kinds of decks and all that. I am planning to do a all-day stream on Twitch when the expansion goes out, so if you want to join me for my opening my packs, playing some cool new decks, trying out new things, you can feel free. It's twitch.tv/morktorkus. I hope this video has been informative to you and doesn't just sound like me whining or anything like that, that you can see how my perspective of all the different tribes really makes it so that Murlocs seem a little bit overtuned. And if you enjoyed this video, I hope that you will give me a like. I hope that you'll subscribe so you can see more videos. That would be great. I am planning to put up some stream highlights on this channel, as well as I will most likely do other videos like this when I have thoughts on different things. Feel free to drop some comments down below and let me know what you think of this video, what you think of my thoughts, and give me your own opinions on the matter. And also let me know if there's other topics you'd like me to discuss in terms of Hearthstone and Battlegrounds or any other such thing. Alright, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.